a passionate instigator and dynamic problem solver. Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, the host of the Dr. Kevin Radio Show, will be taking you outside the box, behind the curtain, and identifying the load of BS we are fed every day. And now, Dr. Kevin.
Hello, and welcome to the Dr. Kevin Show here on Ohm Times. I wanted to remind everybody this is the third Thursday of the month, which means that we lift our eyes, look at the skies, and go, holy crap, is that what's going on now? As we work with our guide and astrological genius, Rob Stewart from innercenterastrology.com. That's innercenterastrology.com, as he takes all those moving stars and planets and tells us how they're going to influence us so that we can best ride the storm or enjoy the sunny weather, because it's always a mixed bag of everything. So as we go into planetary influences for this month, remember that all we're going to do is give you the astrological weather forecast, and you decide what to do with it. Also joining is Ashley Oldstein, who Ashley and I have a lot of exciting stuff coming up in the future, but tonight is all about astrology and the planetary influences. So before I turn it over to Rob, Ashley, any thoughts, questions, ideas that you'd like to share with the audience before we prop Rob up on the pedestal and let him throw pearls to the swine?
Pearls of wisdom. I am looking forward to hearing about the forecast astrologically coming up this month, whether or not I need an umbrella.
I'm thinking more maybe ice cleats and an extra layer of clothes, but we'll see what Rob has to say. Rob, how are you?
Hey everybody, Happy New Year.
Happy 2024. So
yeah.
Is 2024 the year astrologically where the world ends? Should we be, dancing our last dance and, getting the pole out for the last slide?
No, I don't think so at all. But I it's certainly 2024 is certainly, from my perspective, anyways, a year of a lot of transformation as every year is, and growth and all that. I think it'll be an interesting year as election years always are, obviously. But this one is interesting for sure.
Well, if I remember correctly from last month, and we'll talk about it more in the last segment of the show, because I do want to hear what the new movements are going on in the planet, that we're going to have some pretty powerful Plutonian influences in this election coming up in 2024.
That's right.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I remember that as well. Yep.
Yeah. There's a lot of Pluto energy that as a country that the United States is moving through. Many people are aware of a solar return. A solar return occurs on your birthday, and it's when the sun returns to the same location in the sky in which you were born. And but collectively, the United States is moving through the Pluto return, and we're just about out of that. We've been through it, but we're still going through it in a lot of different ways, and the sort of the transformation that's occurring collectively.
Sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, because we have Pluto doing all of these retrogrades, and that's when the planet looks like it's going backwards in the sky. One of the things is that until it really gets its legs into moving forward. And, again, we'll go more into this in the end of the segment, but, Pluto is, with it changing signs, that's kind of I feel the earth move under my feet kind of moment when it gets fully geared up into its next sign and it takes on its next part of history for it to shape and form. But until it completely gets done with the old sign, it's a lot of, yep, oh, yep, no, yeah, not quite, yep, no, yep, oh, yep, maybe. And then suddenly it's like, oh, a new day has dawned, and there's the new energy and it's in place. Fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely fair. And yeah, I think we'll be talking quite a bit about Pluto today. And I'll just dive right in. So on January 20th, the sun will enter Aquarius, and basically as the sun transits these different constellations throughout the year, there's the 12 constellations, very similar to the 12 months of the year, although they don't line up exactly with the calendar months precisely. But the sun will be entering the sign of Aquarius on January 20th. And Aquarius is the 11th sign in the zodiac. And Aquarius is really a process of perfecting that individuality in each of us, that aspect of ourselves that releases the conformity pressures of family, friends, society, culture. And it's that sort of reconnecting with that inner truth and being with that inner truth and embodying that inner truth in a way that in which we put aside conformity and really honor that inner truth. And so there's this real themes with Aquarius of breaking free from conformity pressures. But at its heart, it's this individuation and this sort of cleansing, purification of the mind to see things more clearly. And, outside the limited conditioned self, that sort of thing. Now, the Aquarius has a few sort of commitments energetically in its themes. The first is the truth, the personal truth, and connecting with those that have a shared truth and connecting with people of your own tribe, so to speak, that other group of weirdos that are similarly weird to yourself, like finding your tribe. That's a real Aquarian type of theme. And the other thing is with Aquarius is a commitment to objectivity and seeing things from an objective lens, not subjective, but objective, and seeing things more clearly from a higher lens and removing oneself from that sort of picture. That's a real Aquarian type of thing. So Aquarius is oftentimes associated with humanitarian efforts, large shifting and transformations of the world to a better place, that sort of thing. And so with Aquarius, there's this real sort of rebelliousness that's often talked about with Aquarius, is sort of rebelling against the conformity and that sort of thing, and really helping the world shift is really energetically at the heart of what Aquarius is doing. And one of the challenges in Aquarius is not alienating yourself. Oftentimes, one can feel like an outcast when one honors their inner truth. And so some of the ways in which that we might find ourselves tripping over ourselves with Aquarius is alienating ourselves or feeling like an outcast or believing you're an outcast, even though sometimes it can, it's understandable to feel that way. But it's not inherently true. We're all here. We're being here, and it's a birthright. We're all born. We're supposed to be here. So of course we're not, outcasts or anything of that sort of nature at the heart of the matter. And so these are some of the big themes with the sun in Aquarius. And as Dr. Kevin mentioned, we're entering a period where the Pluto is entering Aquarius. And another theme with Aquarius is technology and navigating genius type of air qualities, Aquarius being an air sign. And so the last time, and Dr. Kevin, you mentioned, well, I should first say that the sun is entering Aquarius on the same day that Pluto is. And so there's this, both the sun and Aquarius will be moving into, both the sun and Pluto will be moving into Aquarius within a day. And it's a very unique timing, very interesting timing. And so the archetype of that is really to shine light on our own, shadow. Pluto represents a shadow. It represents our own wounding. It represents the journey through which we are transforming and empowering ourselves through navigating elements that perhaps we've considered darkness in our own psyche, the wounded aspects of ourselves, the wounded aspects in society, that sort of thing. And so January 20th, January 21st is an interesting period of time. But it really, the bigger thing is that Pluto entering Aquarius for the next 20 years. And the last time that Pluto entered Aquarius was in March, just this past year. It dabbled into Aquarius, and then it retrograded back out, and then we were in Capricorn, which we talked quite a bit about last show. Very fascinating, Pluto in Capricorn. But we're entering again into Aquarius. But the thing I want to say is that back in March, it was around the middle of March when Pluto entered Aquarius, maybe a bit towards the end of March. I was looking at the news, like just sifting through some things that were occurring. That's when ChatGPT-4 was launched. And there was all this conversation and narrative about AI, the implications of AI, this tremendous thing that humanity will have to navigate. And so that to me is a real sneak peek of what Pluto and Aquarius will bring. With Pluto, it brings up challenges, of course. And with Aquarius, like I mentioned, technology, the feeling disassociating from our own emotions is a really Aquarian theme. That's something that can be a challenge sometimes with Aquarius. But also navigating all this technology and all this forward thinking and the challenges associated with that. So I want to stop there. I want to allow you guys time to share your thoughts on all this so far.
Ashley, thoughts?
Well, I'm absorbing all of this. It's more of me learning as you're talking, both of you. But I do find it very interesting about March of last year, and I can't wait to go back in my calendar and find out what was going on personally then, because it seems like a pretty important shift that's happened, and I'll be curious to see how it ripples through to present day.
Yeah.
And one of the things I want to highlight for people, and, I said this before on the Planetary Influence show, and I'm going to reiterate it this time, which is, if you're tuning into this show and you don't have your astrology chart in front of you, if you got one off the internet, but you really don't understand what it is, and you were to reach out to Rob through Inner Center Astrology and that's innercenterastrology.com, and actually get your chart done and have him explain those things, that especially where we're talking about something that is going to be a major change in the weather, And Pluto moving after 20 years in one sign to firmly never go back into that sign and only go forward is a major change in the weather. And if you don't have access to your chart, you're not going to see kind of what areas of your life are going to be most affected by that, so to speak. And so the other thing I want to say is that objective Aquarius, and I don't know, Rob, if you do this, but I always have this association in my mind between Sagittarius and Aquarius. And part of that is that blunt truth. And it's blunt oftentimes because by being objective, we're much more comfortable with gray than black and white. And I look at that Aquarian objective truth that sometimes may come across as critical, or it could come across as judgmental, that it may come across as not having a lot of compassion. And yet this is the house we also associate with friendships and things like that. And yet, believe it or not, the best friendships are the ones that are bluntly honest with you. And, I always remember this phrase from my former business partner, Dara, which she always says, some friendships are just, I'll buy your bullshit if you buy my bullshit, and then we'll all sit in the shit and feel good together. And that's not an Aquarian, and that's not an Aquarian trait. And so it can be a little in your face. I was also thinking of the chat GP thing, because can you really program emotions into the written word if you don't have any emotions you're putting into them? Is there something that is undefinable that when somebody writes something where they convey something and it's interwoven in a way where it's more than just the words? I don't know how either of you feel about that, but as somebody who is a writer, I feel like there is an indefinable something. So I just want to throw all that out and get any feedback you, Rob or Ashley, have on that.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting, and I agree with what you said about Aquarius and regarding the truth and objective, and sometimes that's done without feelings, and not driven by the feelings. And with anything, there's two sides to that sword. There's a blade on both sides of that. Two sides to that coin, the beauty of objectivity, but then also the very, when done out of alignment, it can be very harsh, cold, and lacking compassion. And I think you touched upon all that. And those are things, energies, for us all to be mindful of. And the Chat GPT, like you said, is a great example of that. And I think the Chat GPT and the AI is very interesting, and of course the potential for a fantastic tool. But I have a lot of reservations. It's unavoidable, of course. But at its heart, it's a tremendous tool. The difficulty is that it's only, we're here in a world that's been somewhat the product of our thinking and our consciousness. And ChatGPT, as I understand it, is using the collective consciousness and information and intellect that's been dispensed up to this point. And so basically, here we are in a world where the world is demanding a change in consciousness, a shift in consciousness, a shift in understanding who and what we are and our place and our connection, our interconnectedness. And there's clearly going to be some really wonderful things that come out of AI. The challenge and the reservations I have is that this is using the consciousness we've created here on Earth up until now. That's what's driving all of this AI. And in a world that is needing a shift in consciousness and in understanding who and what we are. Because when that changes, then the thinking changes. And so it's a very interesting point where we're at in the world. The other thing is that AI is, I think it will really press the issue of what is consciousness itself versus what is the thinking mind. Because AI, as I understand it, and I have very limited understanding of it at this point, to be honest, but AI is more of that sort of the thinking mind, more analogous to ego, rather than consciousness itself and simple awareness and that I am, that we are. And so I think AI is really going to push the issue of what is consciousness versus what is narrative, what is thinking, what is all that. These aren't the same thing in my mind. That quote, I think because I am, is not entirely how I've learned to understand the world through many of the teachings I've followed. It's more of, I am aware, I am conscious, and that's because I am. Anyways, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, one of my concerns on this, and then I have a practical question for you, and I also want to make sure that Ashley has a chance to weigh in, is really since the 1950s, there has been a huge emphasis on the homogenization and pasteurization of the human in developed countries. In first world countries since the 50s, we keep on getting these hybrid, homogenized, pasteurized people. That is what is normal, and how we're supposed to look, and how we're supposed to dress, and how we're supposed to act, and how we're supposed to be. And, whether it's chocolate milk or plain milk or vanilla milk or strawberry milk, you're both supposed to be homogenized and pasteurized underneath it. You're supposed to fit in and be part of the thing, where if either one of you have ever had raw milk, it has a much stronger flavor, and it's much more distinctive. And you'd never drink a goat's milk and think, oh, this is just like what I buy in the store in the carton. It has a different flavor. It has a certain authenticity and uniqueness. And homogenized and pasteurized, its whole goal is to get rid of uniqueness. It's supposed to make everything standard, fit a standard size. I mean, and we started this in the early 1900s with the conveyor belt, and then we started really applying the conveyor belt to humanity in the 50s. And I look at chat, that the chat GP stuff is another step in trying to weed out uniqueness and individuality and make us one step closer to being homogenized, pasteurized, and basically, as they used to say, milquetoast. Ashley, thoughts?
Touching on what both of you said, and I think that going back to can ChatGPT and AI convey feeling with words or bring through feeling? Rob, you used the words out of alignment. And this kind of goes back to the homogenized part also, is that the way I look at the way we communicate is when you're in alignment and being in your authentic self and really kind of calling upon, divine and all of that to move through you is when you can communicate at your best, because you've got the help of your whole team, and AI doesn't have that. So it's going to be missing that piece. It will never feel the same way. It won't feel authentic. It will feel homogenized. And I think the whole AI art thing is also interesting. I don't know all that much about it. I haven't delved into it very deep, but it's thought-provoking in and of itself. So I think it's forcing us all to look at the way we express ourselves in a different way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some really good points. Go ahead, Dr. Kevin.
So one of the things that I want people to understand how this is different. So this move from Capricorn to the move into Aquarius is happening in my second house. And my third house cusp is 6 degrees of Aquarius. And it takes Pluto a long time to get through 6 degrees because, it's there for 20 years. So it's not like, the moon. It's going to go through 6 degrees in a few hours. So when I look at that and I say, what would you say to me if I was calling in and saying this? How would I look at this Pluto change? What could I expect to see in my life, or what should I be aware of, or what should I be prepared for? What can I take advantage of?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know we're close to a break, but it's bringing transformation. Pluto's always bringing transformation in, for you, the second house, which has been going on for some time, which is related to your self-reliance, self-worth, self-values, your value system, your what you consider important in terms of resources and belongings, and that which brings you safety and security in your life. And so as Pluto's been transiting that second house now for many years, I'm assuming, it's bringing deep change and sort of burning away that which isn't aligned for you, though not always comfortably. But of course, Pluto's always working. There's always transformation in our lives, and Pluto's a really good representation of it.
Well, so I have a question too, but I will wait.
And we're going to come back with Ashley's question and talk a little more about Pluto, and then make sure we get the rest of the reading in today. The rest of the planetary influences here on Om Time.
Conscious media for conscious minds. Om Times. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio for Vox Novus, the new voice.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
If I could be you,
and you could be me for just 1 hour,
if you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind,
walk a mile in my shoes.
walk a mile in my shoes.
walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out, and for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Ashley, you're up with the question.
Yes. So when I look at my birth chart, Pluto is in my first house. So I'm just curious about how that coordinates with what Pluto's doing now.
Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. But it's going to be passing into her fifth house. Just so you know, because I had her chart up to ask the question.
My chart.
Oh, okay. So it's transiting the fourth. Is that right?
No, she's got it in her fifth house. She's got 29 degrees of. It's in the fifth house, yeah, because she's got 29 degrees of Capricorn on her fifth house. So that Pluto has been rocking on her fifth house cusp, and has fallen into the fifth house in Aquarius.
Gotcha. So it's just entering now. Is that right? Into the fifth?
Yep.
Yeah.
And of course, it was there briefly in March.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So the fifth house is a house of personal creation, and it's sort of where we pour ourselves into the world, our creativity, our opinions, our self-expression, our performance. It's also the house of children, because children are quite literally a creation. We all are, of course. And it's also a house related to romance in some ways. But basically, as Pluto's entering the fifth house, with Pluto, there's a deep compulsion. And with fifth house, that's to express yourself. That can be sharing your opinions, sharing, leaving your mark on the world, and sharing your views, And challenges with the fifth house, the Pluto in fifth house, sometimes can relate to, wanting validation, which of course we all, who doesn't want to be validated from others when we share our perspective. But I find that with Leo and the fifth house, some of the themes, when we're able to express ourselves without needing the other to validate how we feel, that's when it really can thrive. You know what I mean? Because who hasn't felt like frustrated when you share the opinion and they're like, I think you're totally wrong, and it's like, there's something about validating yourself with Pluto in the fifth, and being willing and finding strength with regards to how much space do I want to take up? Am I taking up enough space in life? Has there been a vacuum in my personal expression category of life? Have I been taking up too much space, too little? It's about finding where is that right? Where's the perfect balance with all that stuff? So these are some of the ways that some of the personal transformation might be occurring over these next few years, according to this perspective.
Thank you.
And to me, this is about owning what your place in the sun is.
Yeah.
Owning what your place in the sun is. And part of it is not needing anybody else's validation. You have to own it. It's your place in the sun. It's not that somebody else shined on you, because then it's their place in the sun that you stepped into.
Got it.
This is, and I always think about the I's that happen with each house, and the fifth house is I create. And so this is really 20 years, more or less, that it's going to be in there of you becoming a creative force. Does that make sense, Rob, when I say it that way?
Yeah. I'd say, reconnecting and navigating your personal creative power, and to rehash what you said there.
Perfect. All right. Well, look out.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, the other thing I wanted to say with regards to Pluto and its move into Aquarius is that as Pluto transits these different signs, it's an indicator for generational wounding that collectively in society that we've had to move through, and so not only wounding but also the personal empowerment journey. Where is it where we're gaining strength and navigating what power is and what power is not, and personal empowerment in those ways. And so since 2008, we've been moving through Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto and Capricorn is about authority structures, it's about institutions, public institutions, and things of that nature. And so many of the babies that came into the world from 2008 into 2024 with their natal Pluto in Capricorn, from my perspective, likely have some past life wounding with regards to authority structures, institutions, and that sort of thing. Now, going even back further in time, Pluto was in Sagittarius from 1995 through 2008. And Pluto in Sagittarius is about some generational and collective wounding and empowerment through themes related to your worldview, religious beliefs, having freedom of mind, body, and spirit, and things of that nature. And we don't have time today on the show, but from 1995 to 2008, looking at that sort of collective consciousness, things were moving through in that manner. And so it's really fascinating to look at some of the generational themes. For instance, the generation of Pluto and Leo, which are those born from 1938 to 1957. Pluto and Leo was about freedom of expression and freedom of Pluto and Leo of fun, enjoyment, pleasure, and many of those born in that generation were part of the 60s and the 70s, and that whole transformation and what does it mean to express yourself in romance and that sort of thing. So it's a really fascinating way to look at events and generational transformations, and we all have this great gift to bring to the world. And those born from now through the next 20 years with Pluto and Aquarius will have some great gifts to give to the world with regards to navigating this sort of technological and objective, these types of things that they'll be growing up through.
Okay, before we get up short of time, maybe talk about what else is going on, because we've had a great Pluto discussion and I've really appreciated this, but I'm sure there's at least a few other things going on in the skies.
There sure are, but I wanted to chat about that real quick. But I love Pluto.
That's great.
But yeah, so January 23rd, Venus will be entering Capricorn, and Venus archetypally represents, it's one of the feminine archetypes. There's many of them, particularly the moon, also Venus and things. And I guess they're likely, I don't want to get into the feminine or masculine, what planets are which, but it's one of the significant feminine planets along with the moon, much like Mars is more of the masculine archetype. But Venus is about what we value, what we're attracting in life, what the sort of law of gravitation is very much a Venus type of archetype, where What are you attracting in your life? What do you value? What do you want? And so Venus is not the action for going for what you want. It's more of this innate receptive quality of this is what I'm attracting in my life. And so as Venus enters Capricorn, there's this in areas of what we value and areas also related to relationships. Venus is a prominent relationship archetype. There might be this more practical and dependable, tough love type of elements in relationship where, the idea of having to do the work required for a mature relationship, that sort of thing. And ideas about, what kind of long-term commitments do I want to make in my relationships and that sort of thing. So those are some major themes with Venus moving through Capricorn. Now, the other thing is that we also have Chiron is conjunct the north node of the moon in Aries over this next couple of months. And whenever a planet or an asteroid, in this case, is conjunct or in the same location of the sky as the north node of the moon, there's this work needed to achieve and connect and integrate those types of energies. The north node in astrology oftentimes represent that which we've longed for in past lifetimes and in this lifetime, but something we've longed for and are working towards integrating into our consciousness. And with the north node on Chiron and Aries, there's something about integrating and nurturing our inner child's wounding with regards to how we assert ourselves, how we navigate areas where other people are asserting themselves. And it's this whole area related to the spectrum from assertion to aggression, and how we navigate that in our own lifetime, I don't know why I'm talking about lifetimes here, but in our own life, but also how we navigate it when others are showing qualities of assertion or aggression, and how to navigate that and integrate and nurture our inner child who might be triggered by, is it okay to assert myself? How do I respond when they're being aggressive? Are they being aggressive or are they being assertive? And what's the difference? And navigating that whole spectrum. And this is going to be active here for the next few months. Any thoughts on this so far, Venus or Chiron?
Ashley?
I'm going to hand it to you. As I said, I'm taking notes furiously and learning as we go.
No, I mean, with that, and again, it's all going to depend on where it falls, where it's likely to most strike you in your life. I mean, this conjunction is happening at what degree, Rob? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, I can look real quick. It's around 18 degrees Aries.
Yeah. Okay.
17, actually, even 16.
Okay. So, I laugh because my fifth house cusp is 19 degrees Aries. So it's going to be right in my fourth house, pushing up against my fifth house. But it's going to be in my fourth house. It's going to be in my place of home and kind of, finding something to heal. Can that assertiveness also not come from you, not just at you, Rob?
Yes, absolutely. And though one of the things with the North Node And the South Node is this oppositional energy, and we're oftentimes more established in that South Node. So in this moment, with the South Node in Libra, the collective consciousness might be overly attached to Libra type of qualities and sort of wishy-washiness and deferring to others and avoiding conflict. Not to say that that's happening everywhere and every how, it's just that the collective consciousness from this perspective is a bit enmeshed and maybe overly attached to that. And with the North Node in Aries, it's suggesting that we're being asked to lean into asserting ourselves, but also it can also be perceived as seeing assertion out there, given the oppositional nature of the South Node in Libra, and that we can oftentimes project our assertive woundedness or aggressive woundedness, Chiron and Aries, onto the other. It's a classic opposition of theme. Yeah.
Yep. And so that's kind of, standing up for yourself. But this, to me, is a warning, especially depending on where it's going to happen. And for me, it's happening in the house of home, which I think is interesting, since in the next few months, I'm completely gutting my kitchen and having my home redone. Isn't that symbolic? Is you also have to make sure that your wounding doesn't make you a predator, doesn't make you justified from sometimes some of the most difficult, sometimes some of the worst predators are ones who are doing it from their place of victimhood. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. And, so these energies will be certainly picking up more towards the end. Let's see. We're just getting into it now. It looks like by mid-February, it's more of a theme. It's more of a sort of direct aspect, but it's certainly for the month ahead, something to keep in mind.
Yep. Just make sure your wounds are not bleeding all over somebody else, wounding them in the process, is my only caution to people out there.
Right.
Okay. What else is going on, Rob?
Okay, so there's a full moon, January 25th. The full moon is in Leo, and full moons are a time of sort of fruition and a time of navigating inner tension and releasing and sort of harvesting, as they say. Sort of throwing out what you don't need and hanging on to what's working. It's sort of a check-in process for how things are going in life, really. And this full moon, the sun will be conjunct Pluto in Aquarius, while the moon will be opposite that in Leo at 5 degrees. And all of this is squaring Jupiter. Jupiter's in Taurus, and Mercury Mars will be conjunct squaring the South Node. So there's quite a lot going on with this full moon. And anytime there's a full moon Leo Aquarius with the sun on one side, the moon on the other side, there's something about checking in about, are we each honoring our true individuality? Where in life might you be conforming for validation? Those types of themes with Leo Aquarius opposition. Also, with it squaring Jupiter, is there anything that we're believing about our own self-worth that's holding oneself back from waving that freak flag and being that unique, unapologetic person whom each of us are? And with Mercury conjunct to Mars, the question is, are you allowing yourself to be bullied? Mercury, Mars in Capricorn, that's a real bully energy. So January 25th, be mindful of bullying others, but also be mindful if oneself is being bullied. This is a time to be mindful about that. With Mercury, Mars squaring the South Node, this is sort of a check-in. Where are we bullying? Where are we being bullied? And, time to check in on those areas and navigate that to the highest of your, highest aspect of self, that sort of thing.
This is quite the cluster of energy.
Really?
And it's kind of like the old-fashioned pinball machine when you could have 2 or 3 pinballs going at the same time, hitting off each other. And the one thing I would like to add to this is, 2 things. I want to add that this, first of all, Jupiter is going to challenge you to expand into a fuller version of yourself and to not limit yourself, is how I interpret Jupiter playing in the underlying of all of these things. And with a Mercury-Mars conjunction, that bullying energy, you don't want to be bullied. No, you don't want to be a bully. You also have to be careful to not bully yourself.
Good point.
And I think that with the energy of the Mercury-Mars, people during the height of this, and you said this was January what?
January 25th.
So 24th, 25th, 26th, this is all going to be in high energy. And during that time period, you're going to have to work at not overreacting. You don't want to underreact. You have to push, you have to set your boundaries, and you have to lean into them and not let people cross them. But during that time, you may have a flare of energy. And again, it depends where all of this is playing out on your chart. But you could have a flare of energy in that area of your life where you could let loose of old build-up issues or unresolved things or stuff that you shut down. I think that this kind of combination could make you decide to take out more than just what's going on in front of you. Does that make sense, Rob?
Yeah.
So if somebody does something a little stupid, you can't put in every stupid thing they've done in the last 20 years and put it in one big punch in their face.
That's right.
Nor do you want to be on the receiving end of somebody else doing that to you. So those, especially for those 3 days, I would really say focus on you and you being you and you thinking before you speak, sitting with the energies before you lash back out if you feel lashed at, and know when to just walk away. Does all that line up with what you see, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also add that to think back to the middle of August of 2023, that's when the corresponding new moon in Leo was approximately, August 16th. Back to then, because what's occurring what's becoming sort of what's fruiting at January 25th might have something related to that corresponding new moon back on August 16th.
Yep. Good words of wisdom. I'm suspecting we're getting pretty close to time. So what else is there we should be aware of?
So just real quick, on February 9th, we have a new moon in Aquarius at 20 degrees Aquarius. This new moon indicates a new 6-month cycle with regards to the sort of Aquarian age that we're entering into, with Pluto entering Aquarius permanently later this year. But this new moon is squaring Uranus. And the question is, what do you want to break free from? And so I'll leave it there.
Perfect.
What do you want to break free from? So, Rob, thank you. That is Rob from InnerCenterAstrology.com and Ashley Olstein and I. And next week, we're going to have a return of Lori Powers Auto is going to come in and do a special show with me next week. Don't miss it here on the Dr. Kevin Show.